Shalom and welcome to Women's Radio Phase 2. I've been doing some studying today. Been looking at James 1 and 27. Now, there's a lot of people that quote James 1:27, but they only quote the first part of it. And they really make emphasis on the first part of it. But I want you to consider this following study. It is really, really good. Okay, let's read a couple of versions of James 1:27. Okay, let's read the King James first. Pure religion and undefiled before Elohim the Father is this, to visit the fatherless and widows in their affliction and to keep himself unspotted from the world. Okay, the complete Jewish Bible reads, the religious observance that Elohim the Father considers pure and faultless is this, to care for orphans and widows in their distress and to keep oneself from being contaminated by the world. Wow. Now look, I am not throwing off. Now hear this. I am not throwing off on visiting the fatherless and the widows in their affliction, okay? That would be wrong. Totally wrong. But what I'd like to emphasize on that many don't is keeping themselves unspotted from the world. Now let's take a look at this. All right. In over 40 years plus, many quote this first part. Okay, so let's look at keeping ourselves. Now, I include me, okay? I include me, and I'm a widow. How to keep ourselves unspotted from the world. And so I did an examination of this. I already know about visiting the fatherless and the widows in their affliction. But I've also known and let me think, what's a good word? I also am aware of the observance and the importance of the observance of being unspotted, keeping ourselves uncontaminated from the world. All right, let's look at this word unspotted. From the Greek, and I use the Greek because the word unspotted is not found in the Hebrew. It comes in a different word, and we'll look at that in a little bit. Okay, so the meaning of unspotted from the Greek means spotless, free from censure, irreproachable, free from vice, and unsullied. Now, there's a root word for this Greek word that I can't even begin to pronounce, and it means to defile, or it uses the word spot. Now, interesting enough, this root word has its own root word, and it means a spot, a fault, a moral blemish of base and gluttonous men. Wow. Notice the word gluttonous. Ouch. For many, right? All right. Ladies, this is dedicated to us now. I've done a write-up, and I post this up on Facebook or wherever I can find a place to post it. This is for everybody, but I'm teaching women, okay? I share my studies with everybody. A lot of guys probably wouldn't care to read it, but that's okay. But this is for us. This pertains to the weak vessel, the weaker vessel, all right? So since unspotted is not in the Hebrew, I've chosen the words defile, spot, fault, and blemish to examine the meanings of how we're supposed to keep ourselves. Now, what does the word keep mean? Let's run a rabbit trail on keep, okay? Okay, we're supposed to keep ourselves from this stuff. The word keep from the Greek means to attend to carefully, to take care of, to guard, it gets back into keep again, or one in the state in which he is, to observe, to reserve, or to undergo something. Now, the Hebrew gets a little bit stauncher, a little bit more in depth and detailed. And that's the way we should be. We're supposed to be detailed about ourselves. And sometimes it's easy for humans to get sloppy, okay? I'm the same flesh you are. I can get sloppy. I try not to, but sometimes we do, but we got to stay on course. Stay on course, and we'll get to that later too. There's a little story behind that. Okay, this word keep comes from the word shema. All right, and it says to keep, guard, observe, to give heed, to have charge of, to keep watch and ward over, to protect, to save life, to watch or a watchman, to treasure up in memory, to keep within bounds. Wow, this is getting really good, isn't it? The Hebrew brings out a lot. To perform like a vow. And it gets into protect again. To take care of, to beware. To refrain or abstain from. Pay heed. To keep oneself from. Now this is the Hebrew. This is the Hebrew. Now there are other words for the word keep from the Hebrew. But this Hebrew word is that which coincides with the Greek, okay? Actually, the Greek came last. The Hebrew came first, and the Greek is a takeoff from Yahwah's Torah, the Hebrew, okay? All right. Now that we've run a rabbit trail, let's get back to the grit of what we're not supposed to do. All right. A few words that I've chosen. Let's start with defile, from the Hebrew now. Again, there are other Hebrew words for these words that I'm about to tell you about. But the words that I've chosen are the meanings that are closest with which pertains to the actual verse. And this is where a lot of people get in trouble, and this is where false doctrine comes in, because people say, oh, well, this means this. And it doesn't. It doesn't for that verse. And this is so important when you study. A lot of times women don't study. They just read. But if there's a word that stands out to you, I encourage you emphatically to go to the Hebrew and dig it out. Let's dig it out and find out what it means as it pertains to us, okay? Let's don't just read. Let's be wise women. Let's study. All right, let's get back to defile. The word defile is the Hebrew word tameh, or tameh. Means to be unclean, to become unclean, to become impure, to become unclean sexually or religiously or ceremonially, to defile oneself, to be defiled by idolatry, okay, to pronounce unclean, to declare unclean, to even, it goes as far as to profaning Elohim's name. Okay, so that's pretty clear about defile. All right, now let's look at the word and the meanings. Let's look at the meaning of the word spot from the Hebrew. And it means just that, a blemish, a defect, or a physical defect, or it can be a moral stain. A moral stain. All right, here's the word fault. The word fault is the Hebrew word chata. Chata. And it means to sin, to miss the way, to go wrong, to incur guilt, to forfeit or purify from uncleanness. It can go to that. To miss the goal or the path of the right way or the right duty. Wow. All right. So, to bring into guilt or condemnation or punishment. To lose oneself. To wander from the way. Wow. All right, now let's look at the word blemish from the Hebrew again. It's the word mum. Mum. And it just simply says blemish, spot, defect. It can be a physical defect or moral stain. So it's just about the same. This word blemish is just about the same as the word spot from the Hebrew. It's the same Hebrew word mum. And blemish, you can have all different kinds of blemishes. Again, it can be physical or it can be moral. I had a dream many years ago, before I knew about the name of Yahweh as my Elohim and Mashiach. But I had a dream that I was dressed in a white robe, and I was kind of walking along, and I was washing the spots out of my garment. Now that meant a lot to me, because to wash a spot out of a garment is to confess and forsake the wrong choices that are made. And we're going to talk about this a little bit, all right? Again, I've observed over the years that many just don't choose the narrow way, but they choose the broad way that leads to destruction. Therefore, they are not keeping or guarding or giving heed to themselves that they will not incur blemishes and spots and faults from the choices that they make. And all start with a thought. Usually, it's in the carnal realm. Instead of obeying the word and or yielding to the Ruach HaKodesh, the Holy Spirit. Now, we've all been faced with these spots, faults, and blemishes and defilements in our walk with Yahweh, right? Right. Okay, but the key of guarding is to acknowledge the spot or the blemish, etc., with a circumcised heart of humility. We got to get it under the blood of Mashiach and forsake the act instead of making an excuse for the evil choice made. And this is what I find. People say, people that's been around for umpteen years, some people, they say they don't know. But why don't they know? They study everything else. They do intense study on everything else of what they might want to know that pertains to something else in the Word. But why are people not meticulous about dissecting the Word as it says and acknowledging, hey, wow, this is right. I know one young man, I really appreciated what he said during one of our services, our Shabbat services. He said, Yahweh just chapped my hide about a couple of things, and he named a couple of things in service. And, to a lot of people, the things that he said chapped his hide would be so what? I do that. I don't see anything wrong with that. But this young man saw it for himself because he dug it out. Why? Because he really wanted to know. Or he wouldn't have spent time to dig it out. And then he told his wife, hey, if this is so, then we probably need to do this. And you know what she said? She just went right along with it and submitted to that. And that was good. That's a good thing. When the husband comes into a revelation of something, that's really word, and it can be proven by the word and not just a meaning that's been taken out of context and made fit into a verse that it doesn't even fit, doesn't even work. These are things that we need to consider. All right, now listen to this. This is what Yahweh spoke through Jeremiah in Jeremiah 3:13. Okay, it says, Yahweh expected Israel, he says, only acknowledge thine iniquity, that thou hast transgressed against Yahweh thy Elohim, and hast scattered thy ways to the strangers under every green tree, and ye have not obeyed my voice, saith Yahweh. In other words, Yisrael was scattered. They were scattered amongst strangers, away from their land, because Yahweh knew that they had polluted the land, the land that Yahweh had chosen for them, and they defiled themselves with blemishes and spots and uncleanness by the choices that they made. By the choices that they made. And here they are scattered, and all Yahweh wanted them to do was acknowledge it. Acknowledge it and forsake it. Now look, and again, I'm not throwing off on about visiting the fatherless and the widows in their affliction. I'm not, hey, that's scriptural, that's biblical principle. There's a lot said about this in the scripture. But listen, it's easy to go visit the fatherless and widows in their affliction. Hey, it's easy to send somebody money if they really need it, or as long as they don't abuse it. It's easy to do this. But do we stay on top of keeping ourselves unspotted, undefiled, thoughtless, and unblemished on a day-to-day basis? Wow. Sometimes this is difficult. It's difficult if we give way to our flesh and have a haughty attitude or a nasty spirit, more than we have yielding ourselves to, hey, I'm messed up in my thinking. Y'all will forgive me. Get on your face and ask Yahweh to forgive you and start thinking on something else. Throw that trash out of your mind. Or if something's happened to you and a wrong's been done, instead of getting an attitude, go address it. Go address it. Now, for years and years and years, when my husband was living, he addressed issues. He was the head of the household. There were some things that he repented of, that he did and he repented of. And there were some things that he just didn't know had happened, and ugliness came forth, and it had to be dealt with. But when the ugliness continued and he died, there were some things that happened with me directly that I had to address. So instead of getting an attitude and an evil heart about things, I went to people, eyeball to eyeball, and if I'd been to people by themselves over a period of umpteen years, and then with a witness, usually my husband was on the phone if they were too far away, and then we're supposed to take them before the assembly. Now, ladies, this is a tough thing, and it's not our job to do many, many, many things. But if there's a fault and an issue that has to be addressed, and you've gone to them one-on-one, you've gone to them with a witness, then, you talk to the elders about bringing a situation before the assembly. And this would stop a lot of stuff. But we don't have a nasty spirit about it. Yes, we go to people first. Always. But if a continuation of something keeps happening, it has to be addressed with a witness. And if then they don't receive the witness, then we bring things before the assembly. So when this filth or an attitude or something hits our spirit, it's better to just get it out right away than harbor it, because it festers. An infection comes within the heart, within the attitude, and we don't want that. We don't want that. So when this filth hits our brain, or we allow it to contaminate our human spirit, we've got the blood of Mashiach to cleanse us. If we got an honest heart to acknowledge this blemish or sin, Yahweh, I'm wrong in my thinking, I'm wrong in my attitude, instead of making an excuse for it. There's no excuses. We do not make excuse for a nasty attitude, no matter what anybody's done. What's done is done. People have done whatever they're going to do. It's over with. They stand before Yahweh. If they come or if they go. I know my husband said many, many, many times, many have come and many have gone. And if they left out from us, they weren't of us. And I'm paraphrasing that verse. But it's because people choose their carnal way of living instead of the strict, straight route. This has been a really great study. I've enjoyed this thoroughly, and I appreciate Yahweh for dropping things in my spirit. He has been extra, extra good to me. And I pray that Yahweh will encourage you to be more watchful of your spirit, of your attitude. And just remember, ladies, just please remember, all of this starts with a thought. If we can catch the thought when it's small, then we can just let it go. Now, if you're a woman and you have a husband, and your husband is handling a situation, and then your husband passes on, then with the permission of the elders, you have a right to bring things before witnesses and an assembly, because this is scriptural principle. And then we get it out of our spirit, we get it out of our heart, it's settled, and if people receive it, fine. If they don't receive it, then we're supposed to warn them. As aged women, we're supposed to warn people. The prophet was told to warn people. And if you don't warn people, then their blood is on your head. But if you warn them, then their blood is on their own head. So Yahweh help us all to walk in humility after the address has been done. I'm sure that I haven't handled everything in complete wisdom, but that's okay. I had the word with me. And I kept my attitude under the blood by His grace and mercy only. So I pray this little study keeps you women encouraged in Yahweh. Shalom, shalom.